With it still being the offseason and the Mets potentially having more moves on the horizon, check out my videos from this past week if you have not already. I figured now would be a good time to go back into Mets history a little bit and look at some of the best value free agents that the Mets have gotten, because sometimes late in the offseason is where you could find great value. Now for this video, I chose one player from each year over the past 10 years, and some years were so brutal from previous regimes and ownership that I used some international free agents as well. Now the focus of today's video again is value. It's not so much the best overall player, but more so the most value. The criteria I used for that was what was the expectations we had of the player, what was the player's contract, and how did they perform when the season was over. One of the things that used to help me out was from Fangraphs. They have a spot on their website where they show what should the player have been paid based off of the season that they had. If you like this video going over some Mets history, make sure to hit the like button. Out of the ballpark, slide into the comment section. What were some underrated free agents that really exceeded expectations that you felt were very valuable for the New York Mets in the past 10 years? We're only going from 2015 to this year. As always, also comment down below what other videos you want to see from me in the future. This is a new kind of video we're doing on the channel, so I'm trying it out to see if this is something you guys would be interested in. And you can subscribe, is always greatly appreciated. And if you're subscribed already, you know the drill. I mean, you could actually go back 10 years to someone you haven't talked to in a long time and catch up with them a little bit. Be like, hey, how's it going? By the way, subscribe to Frank About Sports. Thank you for all the support. Now let's go back in time, but only 10 years. So starting off in 2015, I chose Asdrubal Cabrera, who the Mets signed in December of 2015. It was clear that the Mets needed an upgrade at shortstop following the injury and offensive struggles of Ruben Tejada and the lack of defensive range of Wilmer Flores. And when the Mets signed Cabrera, they were looking for someone that had both offense and defense from the shortstop position. Now, the Mets had signed him to a 2-year, $18.5 million deal, giving him an average annual value of $9.25 million. His contract also included a team option for a potential third season with the Mets. And in the first half of 2016, Asdrubal Cabrera was pretty good. He then strained his patellar tendon in his knee and was injured for a few weeks. But when he came back on one good leg is where the magic happened. He hit .405 in the month of August with an OPS of 1,221, just unreal numbers. And then in September, he hit .321 with a .971 OPS, which included one of the most important hits in Mets history when he hit the walk-off home run against the Phillies in the 11th inning. That was crucial to having the Mets reach the wild card game, because back then there was only a wild card game, not the best of 3 series that we have now. Now, when it comes to the value of that season, as we said before, he's getting paid a little over $9 million, and Fangraphs said that that season he provided a value of $27.6 million. So to have his value be $18 million more than what you paid is really great value. Then in 2017, he had another strong second half for the Mets and finished with an 11.6 value. So it was still positive from the $9 million he's getting paid. And since he gave them 2 solid years, they did in fact pick up that team option for a third season in 2018. Now he had a very good first half, but since the Mets had a very bad first half as a team, they ended up trading him to, ironically, the Philadelphia Phillies, where he did not play nearly as good. And even despite that bad second half he had with the Phillies, he still finished with a $25 million value for that season. Now, one of my favorite things about Asdrubal Cabrera was that he spent most of his time at shortstop in 2016 because, as we said, they needed a shortstop. But then in 2017, he spent just as many games at third base as he did at shortstop. And then in 2018, he spent most of his games at second base. So not only did he provide good offense for the Mets, but he gave them versatility in different positions to compensate for when the Mets were having injuries or other players were underperforming. For the free agent that was actually signed in 2016, I went with Jose Reyes. Now, the Mets did not get Reyes until June 25th of that season when he became a free agent and the Mets signed him to a minor league contract. Now, as we know, the last time Reyes was a Met was in 2011 after his batting title that I am not a fan of the way he won. He then went on to sign a big free agent contract with the Miami Marlins. He struggled in the minors when the Mets signed him, and he got to the major league team in early July, but then missed some time with an intercostal muscle strain. But when he came back, he was a spark plug for an offense as their leadoff hitter that gave them some needed help and was able to be the table setter for Asdrubal Cabrera and Yoenis Cespedes. In that Phillies game where Cabrera hit the walk-off home run in extra innings, Reyes had tied the game with a big home run of his own in the 9th inning. Now, as we talked about with positional versatility, Reyes was mostly playing third base for the Mets, which is a position that he had never played before in the major leagues. He finished that season with a $10.6 million value, which is great for someone you signed to a minor league deal. So again, very little expectations, but gave very good value. And then he had an $11.7 million value in 2017. His last season, 2018, though, he had a negative $2 million value. So that ended up being his final season in the big leagues. The Mets got as much as they could out of him and knew when it was time to move on. Now, one of the other fun things about Jose Reyes that we were able to see the combination of him and David Wright on the left side of the infield one more time. The two of them were supposed to be the future of the Mets, and the player that stayed through it all is the one who will always be our captain. Now, 2017 was one of those years where the Mets just had a lot of things that did not go well for them. So this is the first time I went into the international free agents on this list. And we have pitcher Jose Butto, who is still a member of the New York Mets. Now, Butto did not make his major league debut until 2022, since he was 19 when the Mets signed him. And he only appeared in one game where he made a start, giving up 7 runs in 4 innings. In 2023, he spent time in the minors and the major league team, but finished the season with a 3.64 ERA and a value of $4.8 million, which is pretty good for a player making only $700,000. I say only in sports terms. I know it's a lot for you and me. In 2024, Butto was in the minors and big league team again, but when he was called up in July, he stayed on the Major League Ball Club and was a valuable bullpen piece for the Mets this past season. He had a 2.55 ERA, which gave him a $7.7 million value according to Fangraphs. He struggled in the playoffs, so I am curious to see how he is utilized this upcoming season. I feel that he could be either a long relief pitcher given his starting pitching experience, or he could be a middle reliever since he still is new to being a relief pitcher. The 2018 free agent that I chose is also an international free agent that is still a part of the New York Mets, and that is catcher Francisco Alvarez. Now, he debuted in 2022 as well because he was also signed very young, and he only played in 5 games in 2022, but in his first full season in 2023, he hit 25 home runs and finished with a value of $23.9 million. And similar to Butto, he was getting paid in the $700,000 range. So to have someone that was $24 million in value is really, really good compared to what they were getting paid. Now, he did not have as many home runs in 2024, obviously, but his batting average did increase, and he finished with a value of $15.5 million, which is still very good for someone getting paid $762,000, and he still is a very young player. His real value will be determined as his salary increases each year, and even though he had high expectations as being a big-time prospect, it does not always work out that way. Just look at Kevin Parada. He's another catcher who had very high expectations, but it has not worked out for him so far, and I made a video about him and other Mets prospects last month. But one player that did exceed expectations was left-handed reliever Justin Wilson. Now, the Mets signed him to a 2-year, $10 million deal, and he pitched to a 2.54 ERA in 2019, which gave him a season value of $2.3 million, which is surprisingly a negative value considering the $5 million he was getting paid. However, he did have a $3.9 million value in the shortened 2020 season, and if that was prorated over the course of a traditional season, it would have came out to $7 million, which would have been a positive. The Mets had a lot of bullpen struggles in those seasons, and he was one of the very few relievers they could actually trust. I feel that the Mets should have kept him with how well he performed, and I was frustrated when he went to the Yankees for only $2.5 million a year. However, he did have Tommy John surgery that year. He has not been the same pitcher ever since, so the New York Mets made the right decision there. Now, since 2020 was a shortened season, as I just mentioned, there were very few free agents that were signed and even less that were actually productive, even helped a little bit. So the one I had to go with here was Jose Peraza. Now, the Mets signed the infielder to a minor league contract, and he played in 64 games in 2021 because of Luis Guillorme's injury. He did not play great, only batting .204 2024, but he had a $5 million value when the season was over, which is great value for another minor league deal. Following that 2020 season, Steve Cohen took over as the New York Mets owner, and that is where we got to see finally some very smart moves, and also the Mets had a much bigger budget to work with. But the best value free agent of 2021 was another left-handed relief pitcher, this time Aaron Loup. Now, he was signed on January 30th, which goes back to what I said in the intro, that you can still find great value late in the offseason, and his contract was a one-year deal for $3 million. He pitched to a 0.95 ERA, which was beyond incredible, and he really could have been an all-star. His value at the end of the season was $13 million, which is excellent value, especially for a relief pitcher. Now, similar to Justin Wilson, I really wanted the Mets to keep him, but he signed a multi-year deal with the Angels for an average annual value of $8.5 million, and his values in the 2 seasons with the Angels was 2.7 and 1.5. So both were negative seasons. He wasn't even able to provide half the value of what they paid for, and he did not pitch in 2024 and is still a free agent, which goes to show you that one-year deals are the best route to go when it comes to free agent relievers. The 2022 best free agent value, though, was Kodai Senga. Now, the Mets gave Senga a 5-year contract worth $75 million that gives him an average annual value of $15 million. He was great in his first season, pitching to a 2.98 ERA, making the All-Star team, and finishing number 7 for the Cy Young Award. And his value for the season was $27.5 million. So to get a top 10 pitcher in the league for a $15 million salary is amazing, considering how expensive starting pitching tends to be. Now, this past season, he only made 1 start in 2024 due to injury, and he pitched well, but he exited that game due to a different injury. He did come back in the playoffs, and he had some mixed results. He was all right against the Phillies, but definitely struggled against the Dodgers. If he is able to be healthy this season and pitch anything close to the way he did in 2023, he could still be a great value player for the Mets. The free agent that the Mets signed in 2023 that had a huge impact and really exceeded expectations was Jose Iglesias. He was signed to a 1-year, $1.5 million minor league contract, and he had a spectacular year, finishing with a .337 average and an .830 OPS, although he was not as good in the playoffs. He played in only 85 games, and Fangraphs still has his value of the 2024 season at $20.3 million. Fortunately, there is no stat or metric to measure the impact that his hit song OMG had on the clubhouse and the extra spark he was able to provide for the team. He's still a free agent, and the reports have been that the Mets are not heavily interested in bringing him back. However, I do think that the Mets should bring him back. It's not like a relief pitcher where it's 1 year and then you don't know what you're going to get. Yes, he's not going to hit over 330, but I still feel he could provide a lot of value. Doesn't strike out, plays multiple positions, still provides good sprint speed. I mean, he can still provide a lot of good things for you. And I don't want the song or the sign to go anywhere. Now, a player that was signed in 2024 twice by the New York Mets technically is Sean Manaea. He had signed a 2-year, $28 million contract with an opt-out after the first season. After making some tweaks mid-season to his delivery and his warm-up routine, he pitched like an ace for the Mets, finishing number 11 in the Cy Young voting. His Fangraphs value was $22.2 million compared to the $14 million that he got paid. Since he pitched so well, he opted out, and the Mets brought him back a couple of months ago on a 3-year, $75 million contract with deferred payments, making his season salary $17.25 million. Hopefully he continues to be a valuable piece for the Mets, because if you have potentially 2 pitchers that are pitching kind of like aces, not getting paid anywhere close to what aces get paid, that could make a massive difference for your ball club. Now, for 2025, the Mets could still make more signings, but as of right now, the free agent that I think is going to provide the best value based off what he's getting paid is international free agent shortstop Elian Pena. Now, it's going to be a few years before we see him because of how young he is, but by all accounts, he has the talents of a 5-tool player. So if you have a 5-tool player at a really cheap cost, that's going to turn out to be incredible value. So I'm very excited for when he gets here, and I'm looking forward to see how he plays as a Met. And then, as always, on Monday, there will be the 7 o'clock Mets weekly stream, so make sure to check that out and watch this previous week if you have not already. Have a great day, and let's go Mets!